Today I'll show you how to paint this still life with figs, but I'm doing things a bit differently this time. You'll notice I started with the dark areas of the fruit, since they're the main stars of our composition. For the shadows, I'm using a warm, dark olive color, almost brown, but for the leaves I make it a bit more green. You might also spot a colored ground, imprimatura, already on my panels. If you're curious why that is, and how you can make yourself an endless supply of painting surfaces, there should be a little tip linked above. By the way, my name's Alex, and I'm a restorer based in Barcelona. This is actually a commissioned piece for the city's oldest herbal shop, which we're bringing back to life. You may have seen this herbal shop in the movie Perfume, although in reality everything is not so gloomy, rather the opposite. Right now, I'm looking for just the right color for these figs. I don't want the inside to be too red, otherwise it'll look a bit too intense. Keep in mind, we're just building the very first layer of paint right now. There will be more layers to come, including richer colors and extra details on the figs themselves. But first, it's really important to block in all the dark areas. Doing this helps our eyes make sense of the whole scene from the very beginning. The color of the pale flesh is really important too. It's never actually white, no matter what we remember. I even added some green, so it plays off the coral color of the sweet pulp. If you're ever unsure about your shapes or colors, don't worry about getting them perfect right away. You can always start with a sketchy, lighter touch. Just rough in a general shape or tone, and refine it later. There's no mistake here that we can't fix. Notice how green and red play harmoniously with each other on the palette. Take a look at how the green of the fig wraps around the highlight, the brightest spot. This little detail adds a lot of believability and makes the still life really work. It's actually a classic still life technique, and once you get the hang of it, it's super satisfying. Notice how I work with green as well. When I lighten green, I don't just add white, I also use a good amount of ochre. And my brush is always tweaking little details, searching for what feels right. It's a gradual process of finding what I like. Of course, to create a sense of volume, you have to use both dark and light paint. Don't be afraid to go darker, even if you think you've got the right color. Just push it one shade deeper. Notice how green and as you can see, it's all pretty simple. At first, we just lay in broad spots of paint, the darks, the lights, and the middle tones. No need for details yet, just rough shapes. Then, once you've got those big color spots down, take a soft brush and start blending the edges. And voila, that's where the magic happens. If you ever want to impress your friends, or win an art trivia quiz, this blending technique is actually called sfumato. Fun fact, by the way, I do swap out my brushes sometimes. I use soft synthetic ones here, and occasionally switch sizes for smaller details. But honestly, it's not a big deal. Think of a brush like a chef's knife. Sure, there's a perfect knife for every task, but if you just want to fry some potatoes and relax in front of the TV, almost any knife will do, right? Same with painting. There's no need to be a brush snob or go on and on about a flat size 6 synthetic brush is only for architectural acrylic sketches. You can even use your finger and still get a great result. And here's something I mentioned at the start. Usually, I begin with the background and a rough outline of my subject. But this time, as you can see, I'm painting the fig in more detail right from the beginning. There's a little trick to this. Since the fig is our main focus, it makes sense to get it looking just right first, and then build the rest of the painting around it. That way, the background doesn't overpower the fruit, and everything else can support the main subject. Luckily, we've already got our imprimatura down, that colored base layer, which really helps create a sense of atmosphere and pulls the whole painting together, even before we add all the details. My brush is darting here and there, sometimes adding a bit more green in one spot, sometimes a touch more ochre brown somewhere else to give that sense of ripeness, and those little ochre streaks on the shadow side of the fig. That's actually light reflecting from the plate we'll add later. So, a bit of planning's going on here, even if it's not strictly necessary. By the way, sometimes you ask me, do I use thinner or oil? I use both, but let me share a little cocktail I swear by. You'll need linseed oil, refined or boiled, plus some damar varnish and turpentine. Mix it all until it's nice and smooth, and you're ready to paint. Back in the academy, we used to call it the Trinity. There are so many little details that can make or break your experience. The right brushes, good paint, the right mediums to mix or thin it, proper canvas material, and even something as basic as how you hold the brush or where you stand while painting. Some of these things I learned in art school. Some I picked up from other painters. Some came with time. But the one thing I know for sure, never stick to just one teacher. Learn from many and eventually you'll find your own voice. If you're curious, I put together a painting course. It's for beginners, but also for anyone who wants to ground their practice in real technique. It costs about as much as filling up your car, but way less depressing. You pay once and get access for as long as you need. Links in the description. Now let's paint the plate. And this part's pretty simple too. Start by drawing the edge of the plate with the lightest terracotta color you have. It's a neat trick to show the material of the plate, because that edge is facing directly toward the light source, so it's going to be the brightest. This will show the thickness of the plate. When it comes to the shadows, I find it easiest to first drop a bit of shadow right under the fruit. That instantly makes it feel like the figs are sitting on the plate, not just floating in midair. When painting those shadow areas, try not to use too much paint. Keep it thin. That'll help create the feeling of a deep, soft shadow. Next, fill in the rest of the plate with some kind of medium color, and here's a cool trick. Near the edge of the plate, add a bit of dark color on the light side and a lighter color on the far side. The one is away from the light. It's not really about distance, it's about the shape of the plate. The part closer to the light actually curves away from it, so inside the plate gets a bit darker. Meanwhile, the edge further from the light curves up and catches more light, making it look lighter. Sounds a bit complicated, but it's super easy once you try it. Or even better, just grab a plate from your kitchen and take a look. And as before, after you've blocked in the big color shapes, you just take a soft brush and blend everything together for a more realistic look. And hey, you can call it going over to the dark side, but honestly, if something looks off and your picture feels a bit flat, just make your shadows darker. And after you make them darker, make them even darker. No, I'm not turning into Darth Vader here, I promise. But this is just one of the most common beginner mistakes, shadows that are too weak. That's why I exaggerate it so much, so you'll have the courage and the motivation to just go for it. Heck, make your shadows black if you want to. Seriously, forget all those rules and voices in your head like, but I can see details in the shadow. Just try making everything really dark, even just for fun. Who's going to stop you? We're here to enjoy ourselves. And honestly, what's the point if you're not having fun and trying things out? And honestly, that's the beauty of painting. We're not here to perfectly copy what's in front of us or to impress some invisible art critic. This is your painting, your world, your chance to see what happens if you push the boundaries a bit. Maybe the shadows get so deep they almost become mysterious caves. Or maybe you discover a whole new color combination you'd never have tried otherwise. Notice how I'm using a lighter, cooler color to convey the thickness of the clay plate. I apply this paint in two spots, where the main light source hits and the highlight is stronger, and a bit less on the opposite side of the plate, diagonally, where the color from the fig reflects. This creates a sense of light rays and enhances the dramatic contrast. What do you think of this technique? Share your thoughts in the comments. There's also a little secret in how we'll fill in the background. Yes, at first we'll block it in with simple ochre tones and refine the shapes of our objects, adjusting them slightly. But we also need to add some darker background paint next to the lighter parts of the figs. That will make them stand out more and give the composition a sense of depth. Every little experiment is a step closer to finding your own style, your own voice. And honestly, if you never let yourself go a little wild, you'll miss out on so many discoveries. And hey, the worst that can happen? You'll paint over it. Nothing's set in stone. Oil painting especially is super forgiving. You can always wipe something out, glaze over it, or turn a mistake into a new direction for your work. So don't get stuck trying to do everything right. Instead, give yourself permission to mess around, to break a few rules, and most importantly, to have fun. That's where the real magic happens, and that's the vibe I hope you'll carry into every painting, from figs to flowers to whatever you dream up next. Maybe someone out there is thinking, come on, that's just childish, you're supposed to follow the rules. But honestly, why shouldn't we let ourselves be a bit like kids sometimes? Kids live life so openly and honestly, while most of us grown-ups walk around wearing masks, holding ourselves back, trying to look serious or respectable. Somewhere along the way, we've forgotten what it feels like to just be silly, to let loose, to play for no reason at all. There's this weird adult barrier that tells us, you're not allowed to do silly things anymore. It's not proper. Well, you know what? Let me take that role for a second. Let me be your permission slip today. I'll make it easier for you. Here's the plan. Grab your paints. Squeeze out whatever colors you feel like. Paint the very first thing that pops into your head. Yes, it's totally fine if it's something goofy, even something that would make you blush. Sometimes that's where the magic is. Get your hands in the paint literally. Smear it on the canvas. Listen to your favorite music, soft piano, some blues, or Norwegian black metal if that's your jam, and just let yourself have fun. But wait, there's another step. Treat yourself. Grab your favorite ice cream, or a lactose-free chocolate cake if that's more your thing, or some all-natural meringue if you're watching ingredients. Enjoy something sweet while you paint. Make the whole thing a little celebration. And finally, stage 3, the mischief phase. If you want to really channel your inner child, get a water gun. Or, honestly, just poke a hole in a plastic bottle like I did as a kid, and go outside and squirt your grumpy neighbor. Or, if it's too cold for that, here's another idea. Grab 2 pillows, go knock on their door, and as soon as they open up, hand them 1 pillow for defense, and start an epic pillow fight right there in the hallway. Honestly, some of my happiest memories from childhood are from silly moments like that. Why do we stop doing those things as adults? We get so caught up in acting proper and grown up that we forget how much joy there is in breaking the routine. So, if painting shadows too dark feels rebellious, good. If painting with your hands makes you laugh, amazing. Life's too short to worry about whether your art is correct or your fun is mature. Give yourself permission to be a kid for a while. You might just rediscover something wonderful about yourself. Works every time. Now I'm using a soft brush. Technically it's made for watercolor, but who cares what it says on the packaging? I'd paint with a spoon if it worked. The point is just to blend out those edges and keep things soft where they need to be. So yeah, consider this my quiet little rebellion. Other people protest by going out in the streets, waving signs, throwing rocks, yelling slogans. An artist's rebellion? We paint with a watercolor brush and oil painting. Someone should make a meme about it. After the painting dried, it turned a bit matte. So now I'll add a little retouching varnish to wake up those colors again. Just a light layer is all it takes to bring the vibrancy back to the paint, almost like giving your painting a fresh cup of coffee. You know, our greens already look pretty natural in the painting, but I want to give them a little more life and energy. So let's just add a few fresh strokes of color. And by the way, if you ever get stuck or run into trouble, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can always message me on Facebook and send a photo of your painting if you want some advice or just an outside opinion. I love seeing your work and chatting about all things painting. And since you've made it this far in the video, it's clear we're on the same wavelength. So I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button, subscribe, or leave a comment below. It really helps spread this kind of content to a wider audience, especially these days when the algorithms seem to reward the most provocative and destructive things. Sometimes it feels like the internet is overflowing with negativity, and all I want is to get more people involved in something creative. Something that brings new things into the world and makes life a little bit better. That's what painting does for me. It's a small, quiet act of creation. It's a way to slow down, to notice beauty, to share a piece of yourself with others. And who knows? Maybe if more people spent a little time making or appreciating art, the world would be just a bit brighter, a bit kinder. So thank you for being part of this small creative community with me. Before we wrap up, I want to spend a few minutes talking about something bigger. How art, in any form, really shapes society. Not just in galleries or in the history books, but in the daily flow of ordinary life right now, in our neighborhoods and even online. Think about it for a second. Art is everywhere. Whether you notice it or not, the designs on your coffee cup, the way a city park is laid out, the mural on the wall you walk past every day. Someone imagined those things, and they affect how we feel, even if we don't consciously realize it. Art gives a city its personality. It brings color, playfulness, sometimes even hope, to places that might otherwise seem gray or anonymous. But it's not only about decoration. Art is often the first safe space where people can express something that's hard to put into words. When society is tense or confused or just too fast, art is the pause. It's the let's look at this from another angle moment. I think the healthiest societies are the ones where people are free to make things, songs, paintings, poetry, even silly memes, because it's a way to process what's happening around us and to connect even with people we might never meet. And let's be honest, art can be a form of peaceful rebellion, not the sort where you break things or get angry for the sake of it, but the quiet kind that says, look, here's another way to see the world. Sometimes that's political, sometimes it's just a gentle reminder that life is more than deadlines and chores. I honestly think that without art, people get more rigid, less empathetic, more prone to suspicion or even aggression. Art has this strange ability to soften our edges,